All right, today we're gonna be talking about walleye locations in the summer. I'm gonna break down a number of my favorite spots. We're also gonna do some fishing as well. So hopefully we can stick some nice fish. That's probably what I'm gonna start off doing, just looking around, casting a little bit, but then we're gonna get into some locations that you can check out on your favorite lake to hopefully catch some more walleyes this summer. So buckle up, let's get to casting. Jeez, guys, this is a huge one, huge one. Well, there he is. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's go. 30 and a quarter. 30 and a quarter. Check out that beast. Unbelievable. Look at the head on that thing. Absolute tank. Gorgeous fish, man. Gorgeous fish. 30 and a quarter. So fun, man. Anytime you cross that 30 line, you just get excited. All right, let's get him back. 30 and a quarter. Absolute tank. Unreal. All right, so I barely had my cameras even set up. This one wasn't even rolling. So yeah, anyway, awesome way to start the video. But now let's get into some locations, some tips that you can use to find walleyes in summer. All right, I think we should be all set up now with cameras. Obviously missed the hook set, unfortunately missed the live scope footage, but we're gonna have all that going forward if we catch any more fish. But more importantly, we're gonna talk about location. And honestly, I don't know of a better type of, or a better location to talk about right now than the one that we are on right now. I'm gonna break down a number of different other locations throughout the course of this video, but the one that we're on right now is a mid-lake hump. And I love mid-lake humps this time of year for one reason in particular. It seems like they're so isolated, you can fish them so quickly, and it's just like a magnet for fish. So right now, you know, we have basin around us, we have a little bit of shoreline behind us, but for the most part, this hump is extremely isolated. So it's the only kind of haven of something for the fish to relate to, like inside this big area. We have 100 feet this way and probably 50, you know, or probably deeper actually. It's probably like 60 or 70 feet on the other side of the hump. So there's a couple things that I'm looking at when I'm trying to decide which humps to fish. Personally, I tend to prefer bigger humps if I can find them. A lot of lakes will have, you know, small little humps that are 50, 100, 150 feet long. Not very long at all, like a cast length or a cast length and a half across the whole thing. And then there are other humps that I find that are anywhere from 500 feet to 1,000 or even more. And those are the ones that I prefer just because you end up having a little bit more life on those types of spots. Sorry, my spot lock keeps falling off. But yeah, there's just more carrying capacity in bigger humps like that. You're gonna find more fish up on top. A lot of times there's gonna be more cover on top. You're more likely to find rocks or even weeds or something like that, depending on how high that hump comes up. So for me, that's what I prefer, but I have found on a lot of lakes around home as well that those smaller humps can be really good because you can check them super, super quick. And one of the best ways to do it is actually if you have like a milk run of those humps lined up where there's like 4 or 5 of them, so you can check that one really quick, trolling motor over to the next one because it's nice and close. Sometimes you'll see fish out suspending around those smaller humps. So yeah, that can be a really good setup too on a lot of lakes I fish. But right now we're on a bigger hump and there are smaller fish set up on top and there's some bigger ones out suspending around. So that fish that we caught, obviously you guys couldn't see the live scope screen or anything like that because I was just setting up all the cameras. But that one was suspended out off of the structure. was probably like at least 150 feet off. So I was poking around kind of outside and the fish was cruising, and a lot of times, you know, a really big mark like that and it's moving pretty quick. A lot of times I'm thinking pike. So I had to lead the fish, got my big paddle tail swim bait with a 1/2 ounce head. So luckily that does fall pretty quick, but had to lead the fish, cast out in front of it, and it just smoked it right away. So sometimes those really big ones can be really aggressive. And that's another big advantage of fishing humps, is the fact that a lot of times the fish that are out on them are out feeding, because there's a lot of pelagic bait fish kind of set up around these humps. A lot of times it's Cisco, sometimes it's smelt, and other times you know, there's just like clouds of shiners and stuff that are out in the abyss, you know, out related to this, you know, super deep super deep basin area. So anyway, that's humps. Honestly, I think it's possible for me to talk about humps for 45 minutes. So we're gonna move on to the next location that you should be looking when you're chasing walleyes this summer. Also, it is starting to get toasty, so I gotta get this sweatshirt off here. All right, that's better. I just didn't want you guys to be like, what the heck, he's wearing something different. It's a different day. What's going on? How many days did it take to shoot this video? No, I'm just taking my sweatshirt off. That's why we have the outfit change. Wardrobe change, outfit change. I don't know what you'd call it. These mics are so slick. Pop them on and go. It's a tank. There we go. That's a big one. All right, we got a big one here. We got a big one hooked up. You can just tell how heavy it is. That this is a plus size fish. An absolute beauty of a walleye. Oh, come on. Big head shakes, man. It's hard to lift its body up. That's how you know it's, you know, the ones that you can't barely move when you're fighting them. I don't know if this is as big as the last one, but I do think it's just gonna be a really nice, solid fish. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. It's not as big as the last one, but it's real nice. I can't believe I'm gonna hand land him too. He's hooked super good, so it's kind of ideal. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, that's a pretty nice one. Check him out. That's a good one. Probably like 26, 27, or maybe probably 27, closer to 27. And he's hooked just in the top of the skin there inside its mouth. Just deep enough. Ooh, there we go. All right, let's talk about location number 2 that you should be looking for walleyes. But first things first, I'm gonna put this thing back in the water. All right, spot number 2. Spot number 2 that I like to fish this time of year in the summer is actually gonna be deep water saddles. So when I'm talking about saddles, sorry, adjusting the camera there. Now when I'm talking about saddles, what I mean is a big, long, somewhat thin piece of structure that is connecting 2 larger pieces of structure. That could be an island, it could be a flat, it could be an island and a flat, or a number of different scenarios, but the saddle is the thing that connects them. And oftentimes I've found that saddles can be highways for walleyes. So sometimes, you know, they're gonna be sitting up on top of it. They're actually very, very similar to humps in how the fish set up on them. So A lot of times I find that you find fish piled up on top of these saddles, and then they also use them and suspend around them as well. But my favorite saddles are the types of saddles that are actually somewhat close to weed beds. So you have weeds up on top of you know, maybe a big flat with weeds on them, and then it kind of dumps out into deeper water, and you have this saddle coming across that maybe tops out at 15 or 20 or something like that, and maybe there's sparse weeds on top of it, maybe there's gravel, but it's mostly clean. I don't necessarily love saddles that have really thick vegetation, you know, especially shallower saddles, you know, so it's like loaded with weeds. Those spots can be really good sometimes too, but my favorite ones are the ones that go a little bit deeper, have a little bit less vegetation, but has vegetation close by. So that's something that I'm definitely looking for this time of year when I'm chasing walleyes, and it's really easy to locate these on a lake map. Honestly, I would say most walleye lakes that you fish, even the smaller ones, will have at least a couple saddle systems somewhere in the lake. So look out for saddles, and the way I like to fish them is I like to go up on top of them, because even if you're looking for suspended fish out and around them, a lot of times they'll suspend up on top of the saddles too, you know, where some of the other spots, like some of the spots we'll talk about in the future, you know, you'll find fish suspending out around around those spots, you know, like off of weed beds, stuff like that. But in this case, a lot of times I'm finding, you know, fish are suspended right on top of the saddles. But look on top, look around, look for the eaters kind of piled up on the bottom, on top of the structure itself. But I've also caught really big walleyes right on the bottom in 18 feet, 20 feet, right on the bottom of a saddle. So check saddles, bonus points if there's some rock or some gravel piled up on top of it too. There we go. Wow, he thunked it. All right, the next spot that we're gonna talk about is the weed line. You guys have fished the weed line before, right? All right, we're gonna talk about the weed line in just a second once I land this really nice walleye. They all look small after catching that 30, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'll probably turn around and show this to the nice camera. There we go. Beautiful Walter. Just a gorgeous low 20-incher. Oops. There we go. Perfect. Show it one more time. Let's get him back. All right, so we're gonna talk about weed line walleyes. So here's my thoughts with weed line walleyes. So in most of the lakes that I fish around home especially, the weed line is incredibly critical just for all different types of reasons. And primarily, it seems like most of these lakes are super weed based. So a lot of the flats are going to have weeds on them at certain depths. A lot of it will depend on water clarity, stuff like that. But depending on those factors, you're going to have weed lines anywhere from, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out to, you know, possibly 20 feet, 25 feet. It just depends on the lake. There's different weed lines in different lakes. So anyway, what I'm getting at is these weeds are just, they house so much food. There's just so much activity in those areas that it just ends up being an area where the walleyes are using it, the bass are using it, the pike are using it, the muskies are using it. You go to somewhere like Mille Lacs, Mille Lacs has weeds, but Mille Lacs also has these giant flats and areas where the bait can run up into it that doesn't have weeds. So, you know, some fisheries are going to be less weed dependent, but most of the stocked walleye fisheries in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and a lot of different areas, there's going to be tons and tons of weeds. So how do I target the weed line? I guess that is the $1 million question, right? So for me, what I'm doing is I like to run along the edges of weed lines, and then I'm looking for different types of structure variations. So essentially, like you got points, you have inside corners, you have small little bump outs that have weeds. There's a bunch of different things you can look for. I'll put a few different things on the map right now so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But the idea is I'm working the edge of the weeds, and I'm probably fishing 40, 50 feet off that weed line. That's where I have my boat positioned, and I'm looking up on top of the weeds. I'm looking at the weed line specifically. A lot of fish, a lot of times you'll see like schools of smaller eater-sized walleye on that weed line, but every now and then there's going to be big marks set up on that weed line as well. Another spot too, if you look up on top of the flat, you know, where the weeds are actually up on top. Let's say, you know, the top of the structure is 15 feet or so, give or take, and the weeds are about 10 feet tall, so you have about 5 feet of distance between the tops of the weeds and the water surface. A lot of times you'll see walleyes suspended up on top of the weeds, just 6 inches, 12 inches off the top of the weeds. So sometimes that's where you'll find really big ones. And then of course, when I'm set up on the outside of the weed line, I'm also looking out towards the basin to see if there's any bigger plus size walleyes. So when you're talking about summer walleye fishing, you know, of course there's suspended fish. There's gonna be the fish set up right on that weed line, and then there's going to be fish that are set up on top of the weeds as well. So a lot of different ways you can catch them. Honestly, if you just want to catch a mess of fish, you could put down, you know, a spinner rig and just run it directly on the weed line. You're going to catch some bass, of course, you know, but you're going to catch some of those eater-sized walleyes. And then if you want to get big ones, you know, obviously targeting those individual marks with forward facing is big. Otherwise, running crankbaits out the back of the boat and trolling probably 50 to 100 feet off the edge with your baits down probably about 10 feet would be another really, really effective way to target those big fish. You're not going to catch as many as if you were using forward facing and specifically targeting these fish with jigs, but you are going to probably stick some of them, you know, a lot of days. So anyway, weed line is huge. I don't want to spend too much time on it because obviously, you know, most of you, I mean, one of the very, very most classic places where people fish for walleyes in the summer is the weed line. So I don't want to belabor this point too much because this is the one that's probably been talked about the most. So check humps, check saddles, check weed lines, and keep watching this video because we got more information coming and maybe some more fish. We'll see. All right, the next spot that we're going to talk about for summer walleye fishing is going to be pinch points. Now let me explain what I mean by that. I got this guy right here. Let me land this fish first, actually. Ooh, she's kind of skinny. She's kind of a skinny one. This one's all marked up too. Like, it almost looks like it would look if it was sitting in your live well for a while, where they get kind of barred up. This is not a big fish, but look at it's kind of barred up on the top of the its back there. But anyway, all right, so spot number 4 that I'm looking for summertime walleyes is going to be pinch point areas. So the best way I could explain it would be areas between 2 different areas. So a lot of the lakes that I fish kind of have different sections. You know, they might be kind of like multi-lake systems, or they might be just, you know, single lakes that have like 2 primary areas. And it seems like anytime you're connecting two bodies of water or two areas. There might be a big bay. It seems like that pinch point, which is oftentimes, you know, like a no wake zone where you got to go slow between those lakes, or it's just an area where it does narrow down a little bit between two areas. Those areas do seem to hold a lot of walleyes. You're gonna see, you know, fish right on the first structure coming out of that pinch point area. Maybe it's a little weed bed, maybe it's a little flat. You're gonna see, you know, eater size walleyes, bigger walleyes around there. A lot of times I've found like walleyes will suspend out in front of some of those areas. So it's really actually kind of similar to saddles in that it's just an area where the walleyes are using it to get from point A to point B. Sometimes they'll hang out there, but a lot of times they're just highly trafficked areas because the fish are moving between one lake to the other lake or one back bay to the main lake or something like that. So I'm always checking those transition areas because they just provide so much variety. They just have so much traffic throughout the year. It doesn't matter if it's spring, summer, or fall. Fish are always moving around throughout the system. They've done a lot of studies where it seems like walleyes are using all different types of the lake, or all different parts of the lake throughout the course of the year. So those pinch points are really critical because they just tend to congregate more fish. So the way that I like to fish those areas specifically is I will look for any kind of fish holding structure or fish holding cover, whether that's rocks or weeds, you know, any kind of flats. If there's any holes, you know, where you might find fish out suspended out in those holes. There's a bunch of different spots like that, but make sure to check in those places and also make sure to watch out because those spots are also usually very heavily boat trafficked because, you know, people need to get their boat from one side of the lake to the other. So check those spots. Your favorite lake might just have something just like that, and you probably haven't fished it because you always see boats flying through and you figure there's too much boat traffic, but a lot of times those areas will have a lot of fish in them. All right, I got one more spot that you got to check out in summer on your favorite lake when you're chasing summertime walleyes, and that is bowls. So first things first, what do I consider a bowl? So imagine a big flat, let's say it's a 10-foot flat. You have this area randomly somewhere on that flat where it goes down to 30 feet of water. And let's say it's 500 or 1,000 feet across. So basically you have this like deep water area surrounded by shallow water. And bowls come in all shapes and sizes. They're just different on different bodies of water. There's small bowls, there's bigger bowls. But I'll put some screenshots on the screen right now so you just get an idea, a few different examples of what I'm talking about. But what I love about bowls is it seems to attract big plus size fish. And the way that I fish these bowls is I'll actually go out, I'll use my forward facing, and I will scan around and look for big suspended marks. And it just seems like they use these bowls. I don't know if they're relaxing in them because they're kind of an isolated thing away from the big water, or you know, if they're feeding in there, because sometimes these bowl areas will also congregate bait fish. So it's almost just like a super mini ecosystem, and it just seems like sometimes you'll have, depending on how the bowl sets up, sometimes you'll have walleyes on the edges, you know, like eater sized walleyes. Some of these bowls are surrounded by weeds, you know, depending on where it is, how it's set up on the lake. Sometimes you'll have like a big weed bed, and then you'll have an area where it just gets quite a bit deeper and the weeds get more sparse. So that's one of my favorite types of bowls, but a lot of the bowls that I like to fish are, you know, at least 500 feet across, but they're just bigger areas where you can spend a little bit of time scanning and you can cover through the area. And some days you'll show up and there'll be 5 or 6 big ones suspended in there. So those are spots that I always check. And I would also say any somewhat decent sized lake, is probably going to have at least 1 or 2 bowls. So if you look at the lake map, it might have been an area that you wouldn't have checked before because maybe it just didn't, you know, seem like an interesting point or like weed line or something main lake. You might ignore it in the summer, but I'm telling you, sometimes the walleyes pile up in those bowl areas. So go check the bowls on your favorite lake because there probably is 1 or 2, and check all the other spots, the 4 other spots that we talked about in this video already. And I think you're gonna find more walleyes in the summer this season. If there are other spots, I know I'm just out in the water fishing, sharing some tips. I know I'm probably missing something. So let me know in the comments if there's another type of area where you really like to target walleyes, and maybe you can help someone else out that's down reading the comment section below. So anyway, we're gonna wrap things up here. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I think I'm gonna get back to walleye fishing because I am itching to catch a few more of those big ones, especially knowing that there's 30+ inches swimming around.